UConn women's basketball just lost one of the quietest, most important power pieces in the entire program. And no, this is not just an assistant coach left. Jamelle Elliott was connected to 7 UConn national championships, helped define the culture as a player, came back as a coach, and may have been the staffer who spotted Sarah Strong before everybody else knew what was coming. So here's the question Husky Nation has to ask. Did UConn just lose its secret recruiting weapon?
Prime Field!
What's up, Prime Field Nation? Today we're talking about Jamelle Elliott stepping away from UConn WBB in June 2026. Why this matters way more than a normal staff change. And how it could reshape UConn recruiting heading into the 2026-27 season. Because this is happening at a fascinating time. UConn is entering a new era built around Sarah Strong, KK Arnold, Ashlyn Shade, Jamelle Elliott, and a huge incoming front court piece in Olivia Vicosa. The Huskies are still elite, still scary, still UConn, but the recruiting world around them has changed. NIL is bigger, the transfer portal is louder. USC and South Carolina are not waiting around. So today, we're breaking down what Elliott meant, why her exit was not some random shock, who could replace her, and whether Geno Auriemma can actually turn this into a recruiting upgrade. And I want your take early. Is this a huge loss, or is this the perfect moment for UConn to modernize the staff? Drop it in the comments. Let's start with the obvious. Jamelle Elliott is not just another name on the bench. She played at UConn from 1992 to 1996. She was part of the undefeated 1995 national championship team. She finished with over 1,000 points and 1,000 rebounds. And maybe the most UConn thing ever. She reportedly never missed a game or practice across 135 contests. That is not normal, that is culture. Then she comes back as an assistant and helps UConn win 6 more national titles from the bench, including the 2025 championship run. Altogether, Elliott is tied to 7 UConn titles as a player and coach. So when UConn announced on June 11, 2026, that she was stepping down to pursue opportunities outside coaching, that was not just a staff update. That was an era closing, and the timing is what makes this so fascinating. UConn is coming off a 2025 national title, then a 34. 0 regular season in 2025-26, then a Final Four loss to South Carolina. The standard is still championship or bust, but the foundation is shifting. Paige is gone. The staff is changing. The roster identity is evolving, and the recruiting pitch has to evolve with it. Now, because this is sports, and because the internet never calmly accepts anything, there were immediate whispers about Elliott's departure. Some people tried to connect it to Geno's late-game frustration during the South Carolina Final Four loss. You saw the clips, you saw the reactions, and yes, emotions were high. But here's the thing. Both Geno Auriemma and Jamelle Elliott made it pretty clear this was not a sudden blow-up situation. According to the research, Geno said this had been a couple of years in the making. Elliott also explained that she felt called to impact people in a different way. She's launching the Jamelle Elliott Collective, moving into leadership consulting, corporate advising, and organizational performance work. So respectfully, the she left because of one moment theory feels too easy. This looks more like someone who gave decades to UConn, came back originally as a favor during the 2019-20 season, stayed for 6 more years, won another title, helped stabilize the program, and finally said, it's time for the next chapter. That doesn't make the loss smaller. It actually makes it bigger, because this was not drama. This was a planned handoff, and now UConn has to nail the replacement. UConn. This is where the story gets really important for recruiting, because Jamelle Elliott's value was not only that recruits she respected her, it was that she could identify UConn players before the rest of the country fully caught on. And the biggest example is Sarah Strong. The research says Elliott quietly scouted Strong back in 9th grade, before the hype machine fully exploded, before she became a household name. Before she was the obvious number 1 caliber recruit everybody wanted. That matters. Anybody can recruit a 5-star once she is ranked number 1. The real skill is seeing the number 1 player before the ranking catches up. That's what separates great recruiting from elite recruiting. And Sarah Strong is now the centerpiece of UConn's 2026-27 identity. As a sophomore, she averaged 18.4 points, 7.7 rebounds, 3.8 assists, 3.4 steals, and 1.6 blocks while shooting over 58% from the field and over 40% from 3. That is ridiculous. That is not just good player production. That is National Player of the Year type impact. So when you lose the coach who helped identify that talent early, the question becomes, who on the staff is finding the next Sarah Strong? Not the next famous recruit. The next player who fits UConn before everyone else understands why. For years, UConn could walk into a living room and say, come here, learn from Geno, compete for championships, become a pro. That pitch still has power, but the page part is gone. Now the pitch becomes, come play in a system built around Sarah Strong with elite guards, international skill, and real front court size. And that is a different sell. KK Arnold is a senior now. Ashlyn Shade is a senior. Jana El Alfie gives UConn a 6'5" interior presence. Olivia Vicosa comes in as a 6'4" freshman and one of the top players in the 2026 class. Giovanna Popovic brings European guard feel. Blanca Quinones gives you athletic wing versatility. Marie Durses is expected, though the brief notes she has been delayed by routine visa issues. This roster is not just small, fast, skilled UConn. This is starting to look like a bigger, more physical UConn, and that is not an accident. South Carolina exposed UConn's need for more size, more rebounding, more rim protection. So the 2026-27 Huskies look like they're being built to answer that directly. But here's the key. When your roster changes, your recruiter has to explain the vision. That's where Elliott was so valuable. She could translate Geno's standard into something a player and family could feel. Now someone else has to do that. So what does UConn need in the next assistant? According to the official job posting, this is not some entry-level development slot. UConn wants serious Division I coaching experience. And the preference is even higher. More than 10 years of experience, pro playing background, collegiate playing experience. Ideally, someone who has been around the Final Four level. Geno has also said the biggest things are the ability to connect with kids, teach the game, and have a recruiting network. UConn ties help, but they're not required. That last part is important, because the romantic fan answer is always, bring home a Husky. And I get it, UConn is family. The culture matters. You don't want someone walking into stores who doesn't understand the standard. But in 2026, UConn cannot hire only for nostalgia. This has to be a recruiting hire, a modern hire. Someone who can sit across from a top 5 recruit being chased by USC, South Carolina, LSU, Notre Dame, Texas, Iowa, and say, here's why UConn is still different. Let's talk names. First, Nikisha Sales. And this is a massive UConn name. Former Husky star. 1995 national champion. Former all-time leading scorer. 8-time WBA All-Star. Coaching experience at UCFN Georgia. If UConn wants someone with instant credibility, Sales has it. Imagine being a recruit and Nikisha Sales walks into the gym. That is not just a coach. That is a walking resume. She can talk player development, pro preparation, pressure, expectations, and what it actually means to be great at UConn. Her Southeast recruiting connections also matter. UConn cannot just recruit the Northeast and call it a day. The best players are everywhere, and the Southeast is loaded. The question with Sales is not whether she has the respect. She absolutely does. The question is, does Geno want a developmental voice with UConn DNA, or does he want the most aggressive recruiting operator available? Because that brings us to the name that should have every UConn fan leaning forward. Wilnette Crockett might be the most fascinating candidate on the board. She's a UConn alum from the class of 2006. She won 2 national championships as a Husky. She was part of that monster UConn winning machine. But the reason she is so interesting right now is what she has been doing at USC. Crockett has been an assistant and recruiting coordinator at USC, and the research credits her as a driving force behind back-to-back #1 recruiting classes. That is not small. That is exactly the kind of modern recruiting firepower UConn needs. Think about the strategy here. USC is one of the programs trying to challenge UConn's place in the sport. They have location, NIL energy, media buzz, and elite recruiting momentum. If UConn brings Crockett back to Stores, that is not just filling Elliott's seat. That is taking a shot directly at a rising rival's recruiting machine. That would be a statement. And for me, if the choice is about replacing Elliott's recruiting impact, Crockett feels like the boldest swing. She has UConn ties, championship credibility over a decade of coaching experience, and recent proof she can win recruiting battles in the current landscape. Husky Nation, be honest, would you rather have the familiar legend or the recruiter who just helped build USC's monster classes? Drop that below, because that debate is real. Now let's zoom out, because this is bigger than one assistant. UConn is fighting a philosophical recruiting war. A lot of programs are selling freedom, touches, brand building, immediate usage, and player empowerment. That's not automatically bad. Players deserve opportunity, players deserve value. The game has changed. But UConn's pitch has always been different. UConn says, we are going to coach you hard. We're going to demand habits. We're going to put you in uncomfortable situations. And if you survive it, you'll be better than you thought you could be. That pitch is not for everybody. But it is still powerful for the right player. That's why someone like 2027 top target Keena Smith is so interesting. The research notes that accountability is a major part of what she values in a program. That is UConn's language. Then you look at names like Jordan Palmer, Halen Ayers. These are major recruiting battles. These are players with options everywhere. UConn does not need to become everybody else. But UConn does need someone who can explain why the hard road is worth it. That was Elliott's gift. She could say, I live this. I know what Geno is asking. I know what this place can do for you. The next assistant has to carry that message in a world where recruits have more choices than ever. Yes, it is the end of an era, but that does not mean it's the end of UConn's edge. Jamelle Elliott is irreplaceable in the historical sense. You don't just replace someone connected to 7 national championships. You don't replace someone who helped bridge old school UConn, modern UConn, and the Sarah Strong era, but you can replace the function. You can hire another elite connector. You can hire another teacher. You can hire a recruiter with national reach. You can bring in someone who understands how to win in 2026 and beyond. And honestly, this might be the most important staff hire UConn has made in years, because the next assistant is not just coaching drills. They're helping define how UConn sells itself in the post-Page era. Are the Huskies still the gold standard? Are they still the best development program in women's college basketball? Can they still beat USC, South Carolina, LSU, Notre Dame, and Texas for the players everybody wants? That answer starts with this hire. So here's the bottom line. Jamelle Elliott leaving UConn WBB is a massive emotional and strategic moment. She was a player, a champion, a recruiter, a culture carrier, and one of the quiet reasons UConn kept finding players who fit the standard. But this is also an opportunity. If Geno gets this hire right, UConn could come out of this with a modern recruiting weapon, a refreshed staff identity, and a pitch built around Sarah Strong, Olivia Vicosa, KK Arnold, Ashlyn Shade, and the next wave of elite Huskies. If he gets it wrong, that's when the gap between UConn and the new recruiting powerhouses starts to get uncomfortable. So I want your prediction. Who should UConn hire to replace Jamelle Elliott? Nikesha Sales? Wilnette Crockett? Someone else completely? Drop your pick in the comments. And if you're locked in on UConn WB recruiting, the 2026-27 roster, and everything happening in stores this offseason, hit subscribe, like the video, and turn on notifications. This story's not over. The hire, the recruiting board, and the next commitment could tell us exactly where the next era of UConn basketball is headed.
Prime Field